Chapter 36. She's thriving there. I leaned back in my chair, fingertips tapping rhythmically on the mahogany desk in my office. Jason sat across from me, his usually composed face tense and lined with frustration. The aggravation in the room was almost palpable. Mason, my wolf, growled softly in the recesses of my mind, his restlessness gnawing at my control. An urgent mind link from Daniel Winter interrupted my thoughts, immediately tightening the knot of irritation in my chest. Alpha Alexander. Daniel's voice was sharp, his frustration barely contained. My beta scouts just returned from observation. He sounded as if he was trying not to snarl outright. They confirmed it. Scarlett, she's there. That seaside mansion. I sat bolt upright, my spine stiff as steel. She's there? What do you mean by that? My voice was low and controlled, though Mason rumbled with rage in the background. Daniel's mental voice reverberated through my head, laced with anger and disbelief. She's been seen coming and going frequently, moving confidently, like she owns the damn place. No hesitation, no secrecy. She's practically flaunting it. Flaunting it. The words sent a dangerous current of heat through me. Mason let out a guttural snarl. "And you're sure about this?" I demanded, gripping the edges of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "As sure as a wolf's nose, Alpha." Daniel spat, his fury bubbling into his tone. "It's infuriating. She's thriving there. While Grace is here suffering, your supposed mate is carrying on like she doesn't have a care in the world." I slammed my hand against the desk, the loud reverberating through the quiet office. "What else? What did they observe?" "Speak, Daniel. Everything you know." I barked, needing more information. Daniel hesitated. I could feel his wolf, barely held back, pacing behind the link. "There's something else," he admitted begrudgingly. "That territory. Scarlett couldn't have acquired it with her own means. It's too protected, too exclusive. She must have formed an alliance with someone powerful, someone we don't know." The weight of his words settled in the room like a heavy stone. Mason growled again, his restless pacing mirroring my own fury. The image of that Alpha, his overwhelming presence, his condescending gaze, flashed across my vision. "Have you discerned anything about her supposed ally?" I demanded, my tone like ice. "No," Daniel admitted with clear frustration. "But you've seen what we're dealing with. Scarlett is no longer some lone wolf. She has resources we can't touch. It's like she's untouchable now, untethered to anyone but herself." The thought of Scarlett confident and thriving amidst everything while Grace lay wasting away in the sacred chamber roiled my blood. Mason's anger intensified, his snarls overlapping my own thoughts. "I'll deal with it," I snapped, cutting the link abruptly. "Damn her." I turned to Jason, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, his lips pressed into a tight line, his brow furrowed deeply. "We need more information," I told him venomously. "Scarlett's only prospering because she's hiding behind someone. Figure out who it is. I want names. I don't care where you need to pull the strings. Find them. Now." Jason nodded wordlessly, his face pale but determined, before leaving the office with swift, measured steps. The sacred healing chamber was quieter than before, but the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. Grace lay on the sacred stone amid the flicker of faint candlelight, her body rigid against the silver-threaded restraints. Her breathing was shallow, labored. The visible silver veins across her skin had worsened, spiraling outward like deadly vines. The sight of it churned a sense of helplessness deep within my chest. Sarah stood nearby, wringing her hands together in silent anxiety. Her eyes darted to me as I entered the room, desperation etched into her pale expression. "Alexander," she started, stepping forward as if I alone could offer a solution. "Please, it's getting worse. You can hear it, feel it. She barely responds to the healers anymore." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she clenched her trembling hands tighter. I moved to Grace's side, staring down at her fragile frame. Her wolf flickered weakly beneath her skin, struggling against the toxic silver corruption. Her usual soft beauty was nowhere to be seen, only the painful aftermath of this wretched poison. "Scarlett hasn't answered a single mind link," Sarah continued, her frustration bleeding into her words. "Not to me, not to the healers. Even her own brother is blocked." I said nothing. fingers tightening around the edge of the stone platform as I watched Grace wince in her fitful sleep. Every whimper made Mason pace angrily within me, but no amount of power could undo what we faced now. Mason growled louder, restless and agonizingly furious. Jason appeared at the chamber's entrance, his shadowed expression giving me only more bad news. "Alpha," he said quietly, his tone almost apologetic. "There's no trace of Hazel. She's gone. Off-grid. Everyone we've reached claims they've heard nothing." I breathed through clenched teeth. My frustration had reached its peak, but there was nowhere to direct it, no immediate solution in sight. Victoria was waiting for me in the main hall of the Amber Pack House. The air seemed colder the moment I stepped inside, as if the weight of her disappointment thickened it. Her penetrating gaze found mine instantly, and the sharp look in her eyes told me this would not be a pleasant exchange. "Alexander," she began coolly, though the undertone of reproach in her voice was impossible to miss. "What exactly are you achieving here? Our pack crumbles under its burdens, and you stand as though nothing is slipping through your fingers." "Don't start with me, Mother," I gritted out, already too drained to entertain her scathing remarks. But Victoria wasn't one to relent. Her heels clacked against the floor as she moved closer, her presence commanding. "You've lost control over Scarlett. She mocks you from her new throne, her seaside sanctuary, while the Northern Territory Council grows restless. And Grace?" My expression hardened. The mention of the council, coupled with Grace's fragile state, struck a deep nerve. "I am handling it," I said through clenched teeth, though the words felt hollow even to me. "Handling it?" Victoria's scoff was sharp, cutting. "You're drowning, Alexander. The council sees it, I see it, but do you?" Her eyes bored into mine, seeking the answer I couldn't give. I held her gaze for a long moment before finally speaking. "There's more to this than you know," I said slowly, deliberately. "Scarlett isn't acting alone anymore. She's protected, supported." Victoria's brows lifted slightly, her gaze sharpening. "By whom?" My hesitation was brief. "A shadow," I said bitterly. "An alpha with—" I faltered, my pride stinging. "Unnatural power. He was at her house. He dominated the space, Victoria. I could feel it." To my growing irritation, the faintest flicker of recognition crossed her face. She masked it quickly, but it was enough to make Mason snarl. "You know something," I accused, stepping closer. "What aren't you telling me?" "Focus on Grace," she said cryptically, deflecting smoothly. "Whatever alliance Scarlett has forged, it doesn't change her position. It's her resources that matter most now." And then she dropped the final weight upon my shoulders. "The Shadow Pack has acquired exclusive control over vast healing resources in our territory," Victoria revealed curtly. "Resources that could decide Grace's fate." The air seemed to freeze in my lungs, my thoughts stilled entirely. The Shadow Pack. Scarlett. "So," I whispered, my anger curling dangerously low in my tone, "this was her doing." Another torturous cry rippled through the pack bond as Grace's agony echoed all around. It twisted my chest, a sharp reminder of all that hung in the balance. Chapter 37. Possessive Protection. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floor of my healing center. I stood near the back, carefully arranging the freshly arrived shipment of rare herbs. The intoxicating aroma of moonstone elixirs and crushed petals lingered in the air, mixing with the faint hum of activity around me. Claire, my human secretary, entered the room holding a clipboard, her sharp eyes scanning through the inventory list. "This shipment." Her voice trailed off as she gestured toward the row of neatly packed crates. "It's impressive, to say the least. Any issues with the logs?" I didn't look up as I gently set down a crystalline vial glowing faintly with an iridescent liquid. Each elixir was worth more than most could comprehend. "No. Everything checks out perfectly. I just—" Claire hesitated, her curiosity evident as she stole glances at the priceless items. "Scarlett, how do you even manage to acquire things like this? I mean, this is beyond the scope of any normal supplier. There's no way any simple healer could—" I raised a brow, cutting her off with a faint smirk. "Keep asking questions like that, Claire, and you'll find yourself tangled in things no human should ever be tangled in." Her cheeks flushed, and she quickly busied herself with double-checking the inventory. "Right, of course. None of my business. She was learning. Good. Behind me, I could feel the steady pulse of Roman's presence lingering in the air, even though he hadn't stepped inside yet. His energy was unmistakable. Through the newly awakened mate bond, his emotions stretched toward me, steady and unyielding. Impatience simmered beneath his stoic exterior, and Logan's protective strength filtered through the bond like a soft hum against my senses. It made my skin prickle, and as much as I hated to admit it, there was a certain comfort in it. I had Claire oversee the logs, giving her specific instructions to maintain order while I was gone. Roman wouldn't wait much longer. Suddenly, Claire hurried back, her phone in hand, looking unusually pale. It's Sarah Winter," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she extended the phone to me. I arched a brow. "You answered?" I thought it might be important," she stammered. With a sigh, I snatched the phone from her, pushing away the annoyance rising in my chest. As soon as I placed it to my ear, Sarah's voice spilled through the receiver, sharp and frantic. "Scarlett, I need you to listen to me for once," she snapped, her initial tone nothing short of a command before dipping into desperation. "Grace's condition has worsened significantly. You must call Hazel back, immediately." Her audacity made me laugh, a cold, biting sound that froze the air around me. "Oh, now you need Hazel? Now you suddenly remember I have resources that are useful to you? How convenient." I cut, the sarcasm dripping from my words. "Don't you dare mock me, Scarlett," she snapped back, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "This isn't the time for your petty grudges. Grace is what?" I interrupted sharply. "In pain, dying, struggling because of her own actions? Remind me again why I should care when you've spent years tossing me aside in favor of her glowing halo." My grip on the phone tightened. Sarah's hypocrisy tasted bitter on my tongue. "This isn't about her past mistakes anymore," Sarah hissed. "As Luna, I demand you do your duty to this pack." The sheer nerve. I almost laughed again. "Is that so, Luna Winter?" I drawled coldly. "You lost the right to call on me when you chose a rogue's daughter over your own flesh and blood. Scarlett?" "Save it," I growled, my voice silencing her attempt to interject. "Call whoever else you want, but don't call here again." Without waiting for her response, I hung up the phone and handed it back to Claire. "Problem solved," I said lightly, grabbing another vial to continue the inventory. The satisfaction of cutting Sarah off left a smirk on my lips that lingered as I worked. I slammed the receiver down with enough force to rattle the desk. Scarlett's words circled in my mind, each one hitting harder than the last. How could my own daughter be so callous, so twisted by anger and defiance? She thinks she can just turn her back on us like this? Daniel's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. His fists slammed against the edge of the table, his wolf prowling just beneath the surface. "She needs to be shown her place." "Enough, Daniel!" I snapped, my voice cutting through his rage. "Anger will accomplish nothing here." "But he began to protest, but I rose to my full height, silencing him with a pointed glare, one that only a Luna could possess. "Threats won't work on Scarlett. If you haven't realized it by now, she thrives on proving us wrong," I said, my voice sharp and steady. "You want her cooperation? You'll need more than brute force." Daniel growled at my words, but didn't dare argue further. He turned toward the nearest hunter at the door, barking orders to track Scarlett's latest movements. He was relentless. The heat of his fury blinded him to reason. I, however, would not repeat his mistakes. Scarlett wasn't a normal daughter. She wasn't even just part of our pack's bloodline anymore. She was untouchable, smart, and as dangerous as any wolf I'd ever known. A different approach was needed, one that tugged at what was left of our bond, our connection as mother and daughter. Her words earlier had stung, but they were the screams of a wounded heart. If I could peel those protective layers away, perhaps she would come back to us willingly. Perhaps she would help save Grace. It wasn't over yet. It couldn't be. As soon as I stepped out of the healing center, Roman's sleek black SUV sat waiting at the curb. The deep purr of the engine and the striking design of it caught a few curious stares from passers-by. Not that Roman cared about subtlety. I opened the passenger door, only to freeze. Sitting inside, across from Roman, was Eric Blackwood. His sharp eyes gleamed with a mix of amusement and mischief as he nodded in greeting. "Scarlett," Eric began, his tone smooth as silk. "It's been far too long, hiding yourself this well. Impressive." "Eric," I replied coolly, sliding inside and closing the door behind me. My gaze darted to Roman. His emotions rippled through our bond, guarded yet heavy with discontent. I could feel it brewing under his controlled demeanor. "Why is he here?" I asked, directing the question to Roman rather than Eric. Roman didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and, without hesitation, pulled me onto his lap. His grip was firm but not overbearing, his ice-blue eyes locking onto mine as if daring me to challenge him. "Because I trust him, little wolf," Roman said simply, his voice carrying an authority I couldn't deny. Eric chuckled softly. "You're in safe hands, I assure you." I rolled my eyes, crossing my arms as I settled into Roman's embrace despite my mounting irritation. My annoyance deepened as Roman casually took my phone, flipping through my contacts and recent messages as if he owned it. "Excuse me," I said flatly. "What exactly are you doing?" Roman silenced me with a single glance, one that sent a shiver down my spine. He wasn't playing games this time. "Checking for wolves who might be wasting your time," he said, his tone clipped yet deceptively calm. "Like your fiancé, perhaps?" I bit the inside of my cheek to suppress the surge of defensiveness threatening to rise. "There's nothing to worry about," I said, but my voice lacked the sharp conviction it usually carried. "Alexander wouldn't dare mark me. He's obsessed with Grace, not me." Roman's eyes darkened, an icy storm swirling in their depths. His wolf, Logan, stirred beneath his skin, and I could feel the protective rage building through our bond. "And you just let him think he had a claim on you all this time?" Roman asked, his tone dangerously low. His words were filled with quiet fury, the kind that made my heart race. "It was a temporary arrangement," I said, lifting my chin defiantly. "For survival. That's all." His grip on me tightened slightly, his wolf's energy radiating through him. "It ends now," he growled, his voice leaving no room for argument. "No one lays false claim to what is mine." I stared back at him, his resolve a tangible force that left me breathless. There was no denying it. Roman was done playing games. He was ready to make his move, and nothing would stop him, not even Grace. Chapter 38. Insult. Roman walked beside me as we approached the regal gates of Silvermoon Manor. The grandeur of the structure was undeniable. Its silver-tipped spires shimmered under the glow of the full moon. Every prominent alpha in the Northern Territories was here tonight. The air around the place buzzed with authority and expectation. I glanced down at my leather jacket and boots, my unease growing with every step. She-wolves around us gracefully entered the mansion, their ceremonial robes flowing like water behind them. Intricate embroidery and gemstones adorned their outfits, each marking their status and pack affiliation. I toyed with the hem of my jacket, my fingers fidgeting as I murmured, "Are you sure this isn't wrong? I should have worn something." I trailed off, my voice barely above a whisper. Roman's steps didn't falter. His ice-blue eyes locked onto mine. "You're with me," he said sharply, silencing my doubts. "You don't need to follow their rules." "But still," I muttered, pulling at my sleeve. "It's not like I blend in." Hunter, walking just behind us, let out a chuckle. "Blending in isn't the Scarlett way," he said casually, his grin wide. "Besides, you make leather and boots look better than half their overpriced robes." I shot him a small, irritated glare, but his grin only widened. Hunter tilted his head playfully. "And really, who's going to argue with you when you have the shadow organization behind you?" His voice carried an easy confidence, but underneath, I could sense his support. Before I could respond, Roman let out a low, warning growl. His sharp gaze swung toward Hunter, sending an unmistakable wave of authority through the air. Hunter stiffened, his grin faltering. "She's mine now, Hunter," Roman said coldly, his voice calm but filled with dominance. "Be careful how you refer to her." Hunter raised his hands in a mock surrender, though his smirk returned. "Got it, Alpha. The message is loud and clear," he replied lightly. "No funny business." Roman narrowed his eyes briefly before his attention returned to me. His expression softened, though his command didn't waver. "Don't let them make you feel small," he said calmly. You outrank them in more ways than they can see." I nodded slightly, though the confidence he implied felt far out of reach. As we entered the grand hall, my senses were immediately overwhelmed. The space was vast, illuminated by towering crystal chandeliers that refracted the moonlight in every direction. Wolves of influence filled the space, their conversations buzzing with energy. The mingling sense of power, perfumes, and fine wine created a heady atmosphere. Roman stopped, his presence commanding immediate respect from nearby wolves, all of whom moved discreetly aside to give him a wide berth. His hand grazed the small of my back. "I have business to attend to with Nathan Blake," he said quietly. His voice was steady, each word measured. "Hunter will accompany you." Hunter groaned audibly, crossing his arms as he leaned against one of the large marble pillars nearby. "Seriously?" He rolled his eyes dramatically. "I had training scheduled tonight, you know." Roman's gaze cut to him sharply, his ice-blue eyes radiating power and silent warning. The air around them thickened with his alpha dominance, enough to make me hold still. Hunter straightened in response, quickly shrugging with forced casualness. All right, I'll stay. Happy now?" Roman ignored the remark. He lingered, his attention flicking back to me for a brief second, as though silently assessing whether I'd be all right without him. There was an unspoken promise in his gaze. Nothing would harm me while he was near. Then, with a deliberate nod, he turned and made his way toward the more prominent alphas gathered near the center of the hall. I exhaled and glanced at Hunter. "You don't really have to." "Don't try it," Hunter interrupted firmly, tapping his temple. "He'll have my head if I leave you, and trust me, he'll know." He jerked his thumb toward the refreshments area. "Go enjoy yourself. They've got the fancy wine." I half smiled, but felt the pull of nerves grip my chest again. Still, I nodded and made my way toward the elaborately set tables, trying to appear unaffected by the murmured whispers and hushed glances that followed me. I reached for a goblet of the famed moon-blessed wine, curious about what all the fuss was about. Just as the cool glass met my hand, a familiar voice called out, "Scarlett!" I turned to see Emma weaving through the crowd toward me. Relief flickered in my chest at the sight of her. She looked radiant, adorned in a deep emerald ceremonial robe, with golden accents that hinted at her status as a healer. Her sleek hair was pinned neatly, and her whole demeanor exuded grace and calm. Her eyes swept over my outfit, and while her expression remained kind, I caught the faintest flash of surprise. "You look different," she said slowly, though her lips tugged into a smile. "Not bad, just unexpected." I chuckled softly, a small wave of comfort washing over me. "Let's just say I'm making a statement." Emma's smile widened, though she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I don't think they know what to make of you, and I mean that as a compliment." Before I could respond, a sharp, venom-laced voice cut through the air like a blade. "Well, if it isn't the infamous Scarlett," the voice sneered. I turned, my jaw tightening instinctively as I saw Sophie, Grace's so-called best friend, standing a few steps away. Her pale blue eyes scanned me with open disdain. The silver ceremonial robe she wore clung far tighter than tradition allowed, its plunging neckline drawing attention as she intended. "Did you lose your way?" Sophie continued, her voice loud enough to catch the attention of nearby wolves. "Or did no one teach you how to dress for an event like this?" My lips curled into a tight smile, but before I could answer, Emma stepped forward, her shoulders straight and her chin lifted. "And yet you're standing here in that dress," Emma said calmly, her voice sharp enough to cause Sophie's smirk to waver. "Hardly traditional, isn't it?" Sophie's gaze darted to Emma, her expression hardening. "At least I'm here with an invitation," she snapped, then turned her focus back to me. "You're lucky they even let you inside. With no pack claiming you anymore, showing up here is more of a joke than anything." The smugness in her tone sent a flicker of heat through my veins, but I swallowed it down, keeping my expression neutral. "The only thing funny," I said smoothly, "is how confident you sound for someone so out of their depth." My emerald eyes locked onto hers, unwavering. "Do you really think I walked into this gathering without the authority to be here?" Her smirk faltered, just for a moment. "Probably dragged yourself in on Emma's goodwill," she retorted, her voice laced with sarcasm. She's always been soft. Emma's energy sharpened visibly, saw power crackling faintly around her as her wolf stirred beneath her skin. "Say one more thing," she warned, her voice low. The tension thickened, the growing murmurs around us making Sophie shift uneasily on her heels. An edge of uncertainty flickered in her eyes, though she tried to mask it with a forced sneer. Just then, a ripple of dominance swept through the hall as Daniel Winter and Alexander Amber entered together. The room quieted noticeably. Their alpha presences demanded attention. I watched as Sophie darted straight toward Daniel like a moth to a flame. Her overly enthusiastic posture made her desperation painfully obvious, though she clung to his arm with practiced ease. She gestured dramatically in my direction. "Daniel, can you believe Scarlett is here? No formal invitation, no pack recognition. It's a complete insult to everyone." Daniel's dark eyes flicked toward me, narrowing subtly. His wolf stirred just beneath his controlled demeanor. He stepped forward slightly, letting his authority fill the space between us. "You're not even dressed properly," Daniel remarked bluntly, his tone heavy with disapproval. I felt his words hang in the air, meant to belittle me, but they rolled off me like raindrops against steel. Alexander stood quietly beside him, his expression unreadable. His amber eyes glanced at me briefly, the resentment simmering in them hard to miss. I knew what it was. The memory of Roman, of the power dynamic that had shifted so severely. Daniel, emboldened by Alexander's silence, pressed further. "Tell me," he said loudly enough for the gathered crowd to hear, "did you show up tonight just to bring shame to every pack unfortunate enough to be associated with you?" The question hung heavy in the air, all eyes darting between us. I could feel the weight of their judgments, the whispered opinions forming behind every curious stare. But instead of shrinking, I stood taller. The flame of confidence grew stronger, fanned quietly by the bond I now shared with Roman. It steadied me like an anchor, keeping my heart calm even as the pressure mounted. Daniel's question didn't deserve an answer, and by the crackling silence that lingered after his words, it seemed the room agreed. They were waiting for something, anything, to happen next. Chapter 39, Council Confrontation. The energy in the Silver Moon Manor's Grand Hall was suffocating. It was the first time in years that I felt this much animosity directed at me in one place. Although I'd taken deliberate strides to remain unaffected, the weight of countless eyes on me made my skin prickle. Daniel Winter wasted no time charging toward me, his amber eyes blazing with pure rage. His voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd like a blade. "What are you even doing here, Scarlett?" he growled, his tone powerful and accusing. "You show up uninvited, dressed like you're here to mock us." His gaze flickered over my leather jacket and boots with palpable disdain. "This isn't some rogue hangout. It's the Northern Council gathering, and you're disgracing it." The hostility in his tone was thick, heavy, but I refused to let it faze me. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, their expressions ranging from judgmental to curious, as if they were waiting to see how I would respond. I tilted my head, letting my emerald eyes glint dangerously as I locked my gaze on Daniel. His wolf might have been on the brink of bursting through, but Cora stirred beneath my skin, calm and collected, our strength simmering just below the surface. "You seem mistaken, Daniel," I said, my voice quiet but cutting as it carried over the heavy silence. "Your assumptions about what I'm here to do or where are irrelevant." His hands balled into fists, and his shoulders trembled with the obvious strain of holding back his wolf. "You've completely destroyed any chance you had with Alexander," he spat. "Your recent actions? They've left no room for reconciliation, no possibility for a future mate bond." I couldn't help it. The laugh that escaped me was icy, sharp, and deliberate. It rang out loud enough to cause heads to snap in my direction. "Interesting," I said, allowing a smirk to creep onto my face. "How bold of you to assume I even want that bond." My voice dripped with indifference, and it cut through the room like a knife. The color in Daniel's face deepened as rage swept across his features. The crowd murmured louder now, and I could see his wolf pushing harder to break free. His pride was crumbling right in front of me. You're nothing but trouble, he seethed, his voice rough as his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. And you're proving, again and again, that you're unworthy of even being here. I let my gaze sweep lazily over him, making it abundantly clear I wasn't the least bit intimidated. Unworthy? I repeated softly, my emerald eyes narrowing. Coming from someone whose dominance is as paper-thin as his loyalty? You're cute trying to lecture me about worth, Daniel. The growl that erupted from his chest rattled the space around us, but before his wolf could surge any further, a familiar voice spoke, slicing through the thick tension. Enough, Daniel. Alexander's towering form emerged from the shadowed edges of the hall. His face was etched with exhaustion and bitterness, yet his alpha presence demanded the attention of everyone in the room. All eyes turned to him. For a moment, our eyes met, my emerald against his amber. His jaw tightened, and Mason's power pulsed faintly from beneath his skin. With slow, deliberate steps, he moved past Daniel and stood before me, his voice cold and devoid of the warmth I once thought he had. Scarlett Winters. My full name was a reprimand. Let me make this clear so there's no confusion or speculation. The entire room stilled as his alpha tones seemed to vibrate in the air. Our marking ceremony, Alexander continued, is permanently cancelled. There will be no union between us. The words were exact, measured, and laced with finality. He scanned my face, clearly expecting a reaction. Disappointment, perhaps? Anger? Regret? Instead, a familiar, calm smirk tugged at my lips. And that's supposed to hurt me somehow? I asked, lifting my chin defiantly. Canceling what neither of us truly wanted from the beginning feels more like a mercy than a punishment. A faint flicker of emotion crossed his face, a blend of frustration and something else. But before he could respond, he did something that caught me and everyone else entirely off guard. As Alpha of the Amber Pack, he declared loudly, his voice slicing through the murmurs yet again, I invoke the ancient oath. May my wolf form be cursed if I ever attempt to mark you as my mate. Gasps rippled across the crowd like thunder rolling through the sky. Even I blinked in surprise, though I quickly hid it behind a mask of cold indifference. Sophie, clinging to the edge of the crowd, wasted no time capitalizing on the moment. Grace's loyal henchwoman stepped forward to mock me with that condescending smile I'd grown accustomed to ignoring. Just admit it, Sophie sneered. You've been clinging to some pathetic dream of becoming Luna of the Northern Territories, and now you're nothing. Her words didn't sting. They barely grazed the surface of my mood, but I let her have her moment. My tone was low, disdainful. The position of Luna? More curse than honor. Honestly, if your life revolves around leeching off sick wolves' suffering, I'd pity you if you weren't so predictable. Sophie's face twisted in fury, but it was Emma who stepped forward, her wolf power crackling with barely contained fury. You always think you can push too far, Sophie, Emma bit out, her voice sharp as a whip. But I promise you, Scarlett doesn't need to stoop to your level to... I held a hand up to stop her mid-sentence. Emma, I said softly, my emerald eyes fixating on Sophie's face. Without another word, I stepped forward quickly, quicker than Sophie could anticipate or react, and brought my palm across her face with a wolf-enhanced force that reverberated through the hall like a thunderclap. The room descended into stunned silence as Sophie stumbled back, her cheek flushed red and her pride clearly shattered. Her expression was a mixture of shock, horror, and outrage. "You're insane!" she sputtered, clutching her face like I'd drawn blood. I allowed my gay gaze to stay cold and unfeeling as I stared at her crumpled form. "Interesting," I said calmly, "that you think I need justification to punish your disrespect." The entire hall seemed frozen in time, no one daring to breathe at the crackling tension. Daniel, however, wasn't about to let it go. With an enraged roar, he lunged. His wolf broke through almost immediately, his claws and fangs narrowly missing me as I twisted to counter his attack. Roman's years of training had prepared me, though, and my reflexes didn't falter. I slid away from his withering assault with speed that startled even him. Cora surged forward, lending me strength and precision as I targeted his vulnerable point with a calculated strike. Daniel's form collapsed to the marble floor with a sickening thud. His wolf howled in frustration and agony. Sophie rushed to his side, yelling for help. shouting commands to pack healers as the sound of chaos filled the previously silent hall. But my focus wasn't on them, not anymore. Through the mate bond I now shared with Roman, I felt his savage approval. His ice-blue eyes glimmered like ice daggers, watching me. I heard Alexander before I saw him, his wolf power rising as he surged forward. His hand gripped my wrist painfully, his bruising hold demanding dominance. "There's no end to you, is there?" he hissed, his voice shaking with a blend of rage and humiliation. "I will never mark you. Nothing you do will change that." His bold declarations fell flat as another fragile cry threw the mind cut into his concentration. Grace. I took the opportunity to twist free from his grasp, Cora's power surging at my command. My eyes flared with green fire as I met his gaze, challenging him fully. "Touch me again," I said softly but with deadly resolve. "And you'll join Daniel on the floor." Chapter 40. Who was that man? Alexander's amber eyes burned with frustration as he closed the distance between us. His towering figure loomed, blocking my view of anything else in the room. His voice, low and biting, matched the unease now settling in my chest. "You left no room for doubt, Scarlett." He barely breathed the words, his tone laced with something raw and accusatory. "Who was that man the other day? The one with you in your home? Don't think I've forgotten." I crossed my arms, steadying my expression. "Why are we still on this, Alexander? I thought you just made it painfully clear you weren't interested in me." His jaw ticked, his wolf stirring beneath his skin. "That doesn't answer my question, does it? You haven't denied it either. Are you confirming it? Do you really have no ties left to me or this pack?" I took a step back, tilting my head defiantly. "I think you already know the answer, but just in case it's not clear, Alexander, one more time. I owe you nothing, not an explanation, not a tie, nothing." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist, though not hard enough to hurt. "You're impossible," he hissed. "You think this is strength, don't you? Turning everyone against you and making enemies at every corner. What do you want from this?" Before I could respond, a cold, cutting voice thundered through the air, commanding immediate attention. "Let her go." Roman stepped into view, his alpha presence washing over the room like an icy wave. His height, his composed fury, and his sharp blue eyes sent shivers even through me. Gripping Alexander's wrist in one swift motion, he pried his hand off mine effortlessly. "You should know better, Amber," Roman growled, his voice sharp as steel. "Laying so much as a finger on her again would be your last mistake." Alexander froze, torn between fight and submission. The sheer dominance radiating from Roman made the air heavy, almost suffocating. Slowly, Alexander's hand fell to his side. "Who are you?" Alexander demanded, although his voice lacked its usual fierce confidence. Roman tilted his head slightly, ice rippling in his tone. "Someone you don't want to challenge." Then, with a firm yet startling gentleness, Roman's hand found mine, pulling me protectively behind him. His fingers grazed my wrist, checking for harm. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, his calm breaking briefly to reveal a flicker of fear. I nodded, though the tension in the air still clung to me. Roman's glare returned to Alexander, and his voice turned lethal. "This isn't a gathering worth her time. Let's go, Scarlett." With that, he led me toward the exit. The grand hall grew quieter with each step we took. Roman's hand remained steady on my lower back, guiding me firmly but gently, his presence an unyielding shield. "Behind us," the murmurs started. "Did you see him? Who is that man with Scarlett?" "Someone powerful. Look at the way he walks, the way Alexander froze." Roman didn't look back or even flinch at their words. Meanwhile, I remained silent, trying to process the eruption of emotions broiling within me. In Roman's sleek black SUV, the silence stretched heavy. He navigated the dark road with precision, though every few seconds I caught him glancing at me from the corner of his eye. His unspoken questions hung thick in the air. Finally, he broke the silence. His voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. Did anyone else? Did anyone else what? Did they bother you?" His knuckles tightened briefly on the steering wheel, his jaw tensing. "Were there others who tried anything like that fool?" Hunter, who lounged lazily in the back seat, chuckled loudly before I could speak. "Honestly, she's got more bite than any of them do. Daniel Winters' bruises are living proof of that." Roman's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, unimpressed. This isn't a joke, Hunter. Hunter held up his hands. Hey, I'm serious. Scarlett wasn't the victim tonight. Trust me, Roman. If anything, these northern wolves should be running scared by now. Despite Hunter's light-hearted attempt to diffuse the tension, Roman didn't relax in the least. His free hand reached toward me, brushing fingers along where Alexander had grabbed my wrist earlier. "Show me," he said quietly, though it wasn't a request. I sighed, knowing he wouldn't drop it. Pulling back my sleeve slightly, I revealed nothing but smooth skin, untouched punishment. "See? I'm fine," I assured him. He didn't look entirely convinced. Before he could press further, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The name on the screen made Roman's expression harden even more. "Aiden." "Don't," Roman said flatly, his voice sharp. I frowned, swiping to answer with deliberate defiance. "It's just for dinner," I said simply, already lifting the phone. Before I could say anything into the receiver, Roman's icy glare made me pause. He didn't say a word at first, his expression alone demanding my attention. "Dinner?" he finally spoke, his tone dangerously low. "Cancel it." "Roman, you have nothing to prove to anyone else, Scarlett," he stated firmly, not letting me finish. "I'll handle it later," I replied tersely, ending the call. "Relax, Roman." Hunter snorted. "Yeah, that's gonna happen." Roman ignored him, though his tension remained thick and unwavering. Just then, his phone began buzzing on the dashboard. Nathan Blake's name lit up on the screen. He didn't even reach for it. "You're not going to?" I gestured toward the phone as its ringing continued. "No," he said simply. "Roman," I started, carefully choosing my words. Refusing him might jeopardize alliances between the eastern and northern packs. It's bad enough there's tension already. His ice-blue eyes locked on me briefly, halting my words instantly. "You think I care about their alliances with me after tonight? If they can't control their members, they've proven worthless already." "Roman, that's dangerous thinking. You know they're not." "You will always be my top priority, Scarlett," he said, his voice soft yet unyielding. "Always. I don't care who they are or what they believe they bring to the table. I've built everything I have to protect what matters." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His words hung between us, heavy and powerful. Though he returned his focus to the road, his hand briefly covered mine, where it rested on my leg. The simple gesture silenced everything in my head. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure what to say next. The grand hall of Silver Moon Manor descended into complete chaos the moment Roman Thorn led Scarlett out. Pack healers swarmed Daniel Winter, who groaned in pain where he lay sprawled on the marble floor. His pride was damaged just as much as his body, judging from the livid growl rumbling from his chest. And Sophie, she stood nearby, wringing her hands like some tragic maiden caught in someone else's disaster. "Get her away from him," Marcus Winter barked furiously, his alpha power crackling. His anger was palpable, sharp and suffocating. Sophie's face paled. "But you're part of the reason for this mess," he growled, cutting her off. His authority left no room for argument. Two enforcers stepped forward, grabbing Sophie's arm to lead her toward the exit. She struggled pathetically, her protests growing louder with every attempt she made to resist. I watched the scene from the far side of the room, my stomach sinking further with each passing second. This wasn't just a mess, it was an outright disaster, one that could topple alliances built on carefully constructed negotiations. "Alpha?" My beta, Carter, approached cautiously, hesitating just outside my personal space. "What is it?" My voice was harsher than I intended. He cleared his throat, stepping closer. "Roman hasn't answered your call, and by all accounts, he's likely not going to." I clenched my jaw. Of course he wasn't picking up. This was his message. If the northern packs could not control their members, perhaps their territories aren't worth his consideration. Chapter 41. Protected by the Shadow Alpha. Roman's grip on the steering wheel was firm, his knuckles white against the leather, as if containing the simmering frustration I could feel through our bond. The fleeting headlights of passing cars illuminated his icy blue eyes, now darkened with unresolved irritation from the council gathering. Beside him, Aiden sat sprawled lazily in the back seat, his playful smirk unbothered by the tense atmosphere. I adjusted myself in the passenger seat, the unease from earlier still prickling below the surface. "You didn't need to cause that much of a scene back there," I muttered softly, breaking the silence but not meeting Roman's gaze. My pride was bristling under the memory of his protective and territorial actions at the council. Roman didn't respond immediately, his jaw tightening. He finally said in a low voice, almost to himself, "You deserved better than the chaos they made you walk into." A snort came from the back seat. "He's always been like this. Overprotective to a fault," Aiden said, stretching his legs and giving me a teasing glance through the rearview mirror. "Scarlett, you make his life far too exciting. Although I will say the entertainment is top-notch tonight. Daniel's face hitting the floor, that's something I'll play in my memory on repeat." Roman's icy glare in the mirror froze Aiden mid-motion, but the smirk didn't leave the healer's face. "What?" "I'm just stating facts," Aiden added with mock innocence, shrugging. I bit back a smile, feeling the faintest flicker of warmth breaking through the tension. "You could have at least waited until after I grabbed some food, though," I pointed out, staring out the window. "The whole scene ruined my chance at negotiating peace with those muffins." Aiden's eyebrows shot up. "Muffins? You're worried about muffins? You just sent half the council scrambling for damage control, Scarlett." Hunter, leaning casually against the door, scoffed. "She's been like this since we were pups," he said lazily. "Little Wolf here wouldn't eat anything unless the legendary Roman either hunted it or prepared it. Used to drive the entire Thorn Pack kitchen insane." The memory stirred something in me, warm yet slightly bittersweet. I glanced briefly at Roman, his jaw twitching, though his expression remained locked in stern silence. Aiden chuckled again, sending a mischievous glance toward Roman. "Actually, she's lucky she had you doting on her like that back then. Grew up healthy and all. Don't get me wrong, she resembles a pup finally catching its stride tonight," Aiden added with a cheeky grin. Roman's voice sliced through the air, low and cold. "That's enough, Aiden." The weight of Roman's tone shut Aiden up instantly. It wasn't just a warning. It was a warning with the edge of a blade behind it. The healer leaned back, raising both hands in playful surrender, but wisely staying quiet after that. Despite Roman's ominous stare aimed at the road, I felt the corners of my lips twitch into a smirk. It was momentarily satisfying to see someone else weather Roman's protectiveness besides me. And then, as I opened my mouth to rejoin their banter, the loud growl of my stomach filled the tense silence. The sound was unavoidable, echoing through the confined space like a dinner bell announcing its absence. My cheeks heated as the three men, startled at first, simultaneously turned their gazes toward me. Hunter looked like he'd choke from holding back laughter. Aiden, on the other hand, had no such reservations and burst out laughing, the sound filling the car. His laughter made the moment worse as I buried my head into my hands, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. "Should have just grabbed one of those muffins," Hunter quipped from his side with a sly grin. "Or are we going on another hunger strike until Alpha Roman approved meal prep?" I glared at him through my fingers. "You're not helping." Roman's grip on the steering wheel tightened as his gaze flicked pointedly at Hunter this time. It was enough to stifle the guard's sarcasm into a sheepish shrug, though I still caught his muffled chuckle. Roman shot me a side-eye glance, his concerned expression betraying the steel-like demeanor. "You haven't eaten?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with an edge of dissatisfaction. "I didn't have the chance," I muttered, leaning back against the seat. Between Sophie and her nonsense and then the showdown with Daniel, food wasn't exactly a priority. The atmosphere in the car plunged a few degrees colder. No words were said, but Roman's mood curled tightly into something dangerously close to fury. Through our bond, faint waves of guilt and protectiveness rippled my way, making things simultaneously warmer and heavier. Hunter coughed awkwardly. To be fair, he hedged carefully, I was steering her toward the snack table before Sophie started flapping her mouth. Roman's glare, now fully unleashed, silenced Hunter entirely. "Not helping my case, I suppose," Hunter muttered under his breath. Clearly, Roman's single word carried all the weight needed to stop the jokes from continuing. His focus returned to me. You should have let me fix the mess she caused sooner. I tried deflecting again. I'm fine, Roman. Really, I'll eat when we get back. He didn't look convinced. His protective streak was at full force tonight, and I wasn't escaping it. Even Aiden, who had been unusually quiet under Roman's deadly stares, broke the uncomfortable silence. We'll have the most extravagant feast ready for you back home, he said, a theatrical hand pressed to his heart. Everything your picky childhood palate could dream of, little wolf. Roman looked dangerously close to throttling Aiden, who seemed to find this amusing. It's not about being picky, it's about standards, I retorted sharply, my embarrassment melting as I aimed a glare at Aiden. Well, let's see if those standards include whatever Hunter finds edible on the ride back, Aiden joked, lazily flicking the corner of his collar. Roman's icy expression dropped entirely. Aiden, not another word. The healer leaned back into his seat with a grin that said he'd treasure this for a while. My eyes rolled, though this time warmth crept alongside my annoyance. These chaos-filled moments, quarrels or not, made the strain from earlier meetings, or even childhood burdens, feel lighter somehow. The car continued its course toward safety, Roman's unyielding grip guiding us home while his presence, just like his wolf Logan, remained unwaveringly strong at my side. Alexander's POV. The dimly lit corridor outside the sacred healing chamber was suffocating tonight. Frustration clawed at my insides as Sarah's voice buzzed through the shared mind link, echoing what Mason and I already knew. Grace was slipping further into agony. Her pained gasps from the other side of the chamber door twisted my gut tighter. Every sound was like a knife twisting deeper, Mason pacing furiously, unable to do anything. Sarah's tone was sharp with desperation. Alexander, this isn't an option anymore. Aiden Walsh was at the council tonight. I saw him, she said, her words edged with urgency. You know there's no one better when it comes to silver poisoning. I know, I snapped back, my voice harsher than intended. Mason growled in agreement, his restless energy prickling my skin like an open wound. Sarah paused before continuing, calculating her next plea carefully. Alexander, Grace doesn't have much time, if there's any chance to approach him, or Hazel. Her voice broke mid-sentence, laced with helplessness before steadying. You must do whatever's necessary. You must bring them both. Jason, standing nearby with his arms crossed, shot me a glance but remained silent. He looked as worn down as I felt, weighed by the endless search efforts turning up little more than dead ends. Sarah, I replied tightly. Wizak, Aiden Walsh is likely tied to Scarlett and that alpha. You think he's going to listen? Act neutral in this? The bitterness in my tone soured the air. The image of Scarlett within arm's reach of that mysterious alpha sent Mason snarling in my chest. Even now, the humiliation burned hot under my skin. Try anyway, Sarah urged. Her desperation broke through once more. If there's anyone who might have half a chance here, it's you. Whether you hate her or not, Scarlett has their ear. Her reminder made my fists clench. Depend on Scarlett? The woman who orchestrated half this storm herself? Jason spoke reluctantly. Sarah's right about one thing. Aiden could speed up treatment, assuming his methods bypass Grace's resistance. Sarah's voice interjected again, raw with restraint. Grace can survive this, but not if we hesitate. You know what's at stake, what you stand to lose. Her words hung heavy in the air. Grace's fragile whimpers behind the door clawed at every nerve left intact. Chapter 42, Retribution. I rushed into the sacred healing den, the scent of wolfbane and herbs choking the air. Daniel lay on the makeshift bed, his face pale and forehead slick with sweat. His wolf's presence flickered weakly beneath his skin, its usual vibrant dominance reduced to a faint whimper. My heart clenched at the sight of my son, my pride, my future alpha, laid low like this. But more than sympathy, a simmering fury boiled within me. Tell me what happened, I demanded, stepping closer to him. Daniel struggled to sit up. His breath came in shallow gasps. She humiliated me, he rasped, his voice raw with a mix of rage and shame. His unfocused amber eyes barely looked at me as his fists clenched, trembling against the white linen sheets. That creature, Scarlett, snuck into the council gathering like she belonged there. He spat the words like acid. When I called her out, she struck me like I was nothing. Nothing. His voice broke on that last word, and through the bond I shared with him, I felt every fragment of his pride shattering anew. I leaned in closer, speaking softly but firmly. You're not nothing, Daniel. She's the problem here, not you. She always has been. His breathing steadied slightly, but his amber eyes burned with renewed frustration. Mother, we can't let her get away with this. She walked out of there like she owned the meeting, like she was untouchable. It was an insult to every pack leader. He clenched his fists tighter. I placed a soothing hand on his arm, though my mind churned furiously. Scarlett had gone too far this time. Her audacity, her complete disregard, and now she'd dared to harm my son. We won't let her, I assured him, my voice low but firm with conviction. Scarlett thinks she's beyond consequences, that her so-called independence shields her. But we'll remind her, Daniel. We'll remind her exactly where she comes from and how easily it can all be taken away. Daniel exhaled sharply, his jaw tight. Cut her off, everything. Sacred chambers, hunting grounds, healing supplies. Take it all away. I smiled bitterly. Exactly what I had in mind. His wolf growled faintly, grudging approval simmering below the surface. Still, there was hesitation in his amber gaze. But, he began, then stopped, visibly torn. I narrowed my eyes. But what? He shook his head. She's still... I don't know, Mother. She's still blood. It feels wrong to keep using her like this, even after everything. Desperate times require desperate measures, I snapped, cutting through his uncertainty. She left us no choice. Daniel sagged against the pillows, clearly too exhausted to argue further. Through our pack bond, I could feel his shame fighting against anger, each emotion pulling him in different directions. I wouldn't let his indecision slow us down. This wasn't just about family anymore. It was about survival. In Grace's healing chamber, soft whimpers echoed through the sterile space. The sight of her tore at my heart. Her once radiant skin, now grayish and laced with blackened veins. Her pale blue eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she lay trembling on the sacred stones. Alexander hovered nearby, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He looked as though he'd break apart at any moment, his focus entirely consumed by Grace's worsening condition. I can't stand it, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She shivered violently as if the room's temperature had plunged into freezing depths. The scents in here, they suffocate me. The herbs, the stones, I can't breathe. The desperation in her voice pierced my chest. Alexander knelt beside her, his massive frame mere inches from collapsing himself. Grace, he began, his voice cracking, we're doing everything we can. You have to hold on, please. She gasped, clutching weakly at his hands. But every day is worse. Her voice faltered, trembling. I can feel it creeping through my veins, Alexander. It's like I'm already dying. Her words tore through us both. Havoc rippled down the pack bond, her pain a weight we all carried. I'll get you out of here, Alexander said suddenly, his voice more resolute. He turned to me, fire flickering behind his amber eyes. We need to move her, he said sharply, his alpha tone leaving no room for argument. If this place is suffocating her, then we need to find somewhere she can breathe again. Somewhere better. But where? I pushed back gently, though I already knew what he would say. The seaside mansion, Alexander growled, his frustration nearly breaking free from his skin. That property, it's perfect. The air, the setting, the privacy, it will help her. It has to. I sighed, shaking my head. You've tried already. They won't sell. Even tripling the offer hasn't moved them. I don't care, he bit out, his eyes blazing with desperation. Jason will offer 5 times, 10 times if we have to. Even my heart ached at seeing his resolve crumble against the realization that money couldn't solve this. The mansion wasn't just some property, it was Scarlett's now. Grace's pitiful sobs echoed through the chamber again. The scent of her despair was overwhelming. She'll die in here, Alexander whispered. His head dropped low, his voice breaking. We can't let that happen. I said nothing. His words reverberated through me, each one sinking like lead into my bones. Later, I paced furiously across the study after receiving gossip from one reliable source. The image of Scarlett standing tall at her treatment center enraged me. Workers unloaded cart after cart of precious healing supplies, the very items Grace needed, now firmly on Scarlett's turf, smugly guarded. Claire, Scarlett's secretary, had been efficient, expertly overseeing the chaos. Meanwhile, Scarlett, the rogue daughter I could no longer recognize, had distributed basic healing potions among her employees. A display, no doubt, revealing her wealth, her growing power, her sudden independence. I gritted my teeth. She had turned into someone I no longer controlled, no longer reached. The daughter I raised had dissolved into that cold, calculating shadow of a wolf. Fueled by frustration, I tried reaching Scarlett through business channels. With Jason's help, I framed it as a simple inquiry about Daniel's condition, something neutral. It would have worked on the Scarlett I once knew. But the Scarlett who answered wasted no time. Her voice, or her mocking laughter, barely lasted seconds before the rude click of her disconnection rang in my ear. I gripped the handset tighter, my nails biting into my palm. She was toying with us, the way rogues toyed with prey, showing her power, her detachment, her disregard for the family she once begged to be part of. But the marks outside her center and home, those glowing protectors steeped in the foreign aura of that mysterious alpha, they were a warning. No wolves of mine dared intrude now. Sophie stormed into view next, having tried her own attempts to reach Scarlett. The young, fiery she-wolf was livid, her face blotched red from anger. "She laughed," Sophie seethed, her voice more of a growl. "She laughed, Luna!" I screamed at her, begged her to stop toying with Grace this way, and she laughed at me. I seethed, slow venom, perfectly contained, even as my blood burned beneath my skin. She's done this, hasn't she? Put Grace in this state? For revenge?" Sophie snarled, trembling with rage that barely hid her grief. I nodded, every muscle in my body tense. I tried steadying Sophie with calm words, small assurances. Still, this helplessness weighed heavily. I could feel it crushing my shoulders, reserve after reserve. And deep down, this bitter irony clawed at me. This was all of my doing. I had chosen to raise Grace, lavished her with love meant for someone else, ignored the warning signs, and now we were paying the price for all of it. My chosen daughter was likely to die, while the one who had survived grew stronger than I could have ever imagined. It felt like fate's cruel twist. But knowing Scarlett, she would call it something else, retribution. And for once I had no response. Chapter 43, Night Owl. The soft crash of waves outside the mansion provided the perfect background melody after the conflict at the council gathering. I'd eaten more than my fill earlier thanks to Roman and Aiden's insistence. The shrill buzz of my phone echoed through the quiet room. I groaned as a quick glance revealed her name lit up on the screen. Of course, Sophie wouldn't let a day pass without trying to get under my skin. "Whatever this is, make it quick," I answered, my tone a mix of boredom and irritation. "I have better things to do than listen to you drone on." Her voice came sharp and mocking. "Well, aren't we high and mighty tonight, still licking your wounds from the council? Or has the reality of Alexander abandoning you finally sunk in?" I leaned back into the plush chair with a smirk, her attempt to provoke me only amusing. "Abandoning me?" I repeated, drawing the words out as though they were foreign to me. "You do realize I publicly rejected Alexander, don't you? Or are you so delusional you've convinced yourself otherwise?" Sophie's tone hardened immediately. "Rejected him? Please. You can tell yourself whatever you want, but everyone can see the truth. Alexander's done with you. He's finally chosen Grace. Meanwhile, you're left with nothing. Not even your pride." I laughed coldly. Sophie's venom barely fazed me. It was almost entertaining watching her twist the situation into something she could stomach. "Done with me?" I echoed mockingly. "That implies there was ever anything for him to be done with. Let me make this perfectly clear, Sophie. Alexander has always been trash. And trash, I throw away." End of story. I could practically hear her seething on the other end. "You're unbelievable," she hissed. "You act like you're better than everyone else, but look at you, you're alone. You gave up your only chance at becoming anything important, and now you're left with—" "Spare me the monologue," I interrupted, my tone sharp and cutting. "Or better yet, save it for someone who cares. Because it sure as hell isn't me." "Oh, but you will care," Sophie snapped. "You think you're untouchable, sitting up there on your high horse, but newsflash, you've lost everything that mattered. Meanwhile, Alexander hasn't wasted a moment. He's working around the clock to secure that beachfront mansion for Grace. It's only a matter of time before she's living her best life while you rot in whatever hole you crawled into." Her words were so ridiculous I couldn't contain myself. A genuine laugh burst from my throat, loud and sharp. "Alexander? Negotiating? For the mansion?" I repeated, the amusement clear in my tone. "That's adorable. Really? When he actually manages to acquire it, which we both know he won't, then maybe you can give me a call. Until then, don't waste my time." "You think you're so clever," Sophie snarled, but her voice cracked slightly, betraying the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She was flailing, and I had no interest in humoring her further. With a satisfied smirk, I hung up, letting the call end abruptly. Whatever pathetic comeback she'd prepared would have to wait. Barely moments later, Emma's familiar voice pressed gently against the edges of my mind through our private bond. The urgency in her mental touch told me she wasn't interrupting without reason. "I assume you've heard about Alexander's latest tirade?" Emma's voice resonated with palpable annoyance as she initiated the connection. "I've heard enough," I replied without hesitation, already anticipating what was coming next. "He's desperate. Grace has him right where she wants him, doesn't she?" Emma sighed deeply, her frustration evident. "She's playing him like a damn fiddle. Scarlett, it's disgusting to watch. She's using her deteriorating state to whip him into a frenzy. He's lost all sense trying to make this mansion thing work, using her supposed last wish as an excuse." I leaned back further into the chair, casually twisting a strand of hair around my finger. "Grace is good at this game," I said thoughtfully. "Pitiful, dew-eyed maiden, fragile and dying, in need of her mate's every ounce of devotion. It's her most effective trick." "And Alexander's falling for it," Emma shot back, her voice filled with disdain. "Honestly, Scarlett, it's pathetic. He's not even running the Northern Territories anymore. Grace is. Every decision he makes is hers in disguise." "And?" I asked dryly. "Grace can have him. Let her chain him up with her sob stories, for all I care. It's almost entertaining, in a sad sort of way." Emma hesitated, the pause in her voice carrying uncertainty. "I don't understand why you're so calm about this. If they figure out the owner of that mansion—" "They won't." Her skepticism came through clearly. "How can you be so sure about that? Scarlett, they're putting all their efforts into finding whoever owns it. If they discover—" "They won't," I interrupted, my voice firm and confident. There was silence again, thick and laden with questions she was too unsure to voice. I decided to end her suspense. "I own it, Emma," I said simply, each word carrying deliberate precision. Her gasp was audible even through the mental bond. "What? The mansion?" I continued smoothly. "It's mine. Roman acquired it for me years ago. It's been mine from the moment I left the Thorn Pack. They can keep chasing it, but they'll never touch it. Not Alexander, not Grace. No one." For a long moment, Emma said nothing. The sheer weight of my revelation had left her speechless, and I couldn't help but enjoy the silence that followed. When she finally spoke, her tone was a mix of disbelief and awe. You've known this entire time?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Of course I have. Why do you think I've been so unbothered by their efforts? Watching them spin their wheels has been more entertaining than I expected." Emma's voice softened, her initial shock fading into quiet understanding. "You're cruel sometimes," she said, though there was a hint of amusement in her tone now. "And unapologetically so," I replied, the satisfaction in my words undeniable. It wasn't long after my conversation with Emma that Roman entered the room, his presence shifting the atmosphere immediately. Even after years apart, his arrival still commanded the same silent respect. His hair was damp from a recent shower, and the faint scent of soap and something uniquely him lingered in the air. His piercing blue eyes found me instantly, scanning me with that protective intensity I was still trying to get used to. "You're still awake?" he asked after a long moment, his voice calm but edged with faint irritation. "It's late. You should be resting." I shrugged lazily, gesturing toward the untouched cup of tea Aiden had left earlier. "What can I say? I'm a night owl," I replied casually. Roman's eyes narrowed as he approached, his gaze landing on the cup. "You didn't drink it." "It's tea, Roman," I said, rolling my eyes. "I wasn't in the mood. Don't act like it's a crime." He didn't respond right away, but the tension in his shoulders was telling. Without a word, he turned toward the door and called for Hunter, his voice low but firm. Hunter appeared moments later, looking mildly irritated. "What's the emergency now?" "Moonflower tea," Roman commanded, his tone brooking no argument. Hunter sighed dramatically, but disappeared to fulfill the order. When he returned, he carried a steaming cup of moonflower tea, the soothing aroma wafting through the room. Roman took the cup and handed it to me, his expression leaving no room for refusal. "Drink," he said simply. I sighed but obeyed, bringing the warm cup to my lips. The tension in my chest eased almost immediately, the tea's calming properties working their magic. As I drank, Roman's features softened, his icy exterior melting just a fraction. His satisfaction was subtle, but it was there, a quiet reassurance that no matter how strong I thought I wasn't alone. Chapter 44. She was mine. The weight of the night pressed against the mansion like an uninvited guest, silent and suffocating. Scarlett had finally dozed off after finishing the tea Hunter prepared for her. She resisted at first, her typical stubbornness on full display, but I wasn't letting her go to bed without it. It was only when her breathing evened out, soft and steady, that I allowed myself to leave her room. Hunter entered my study with his usual quiet efficiency, but there was tension in the air around him. He waited until I acknowledged him, his respectful silence speaking louder than words. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers idly against the polished wood of the armrest. "What is it?" I asked, my voice calm but edged with curiosity. I already had a suspicion. Hunter stood straighter as if preparing for a storm. "Alexander won't relent," he started, his tone cautious. "His beta's been waiting outside for hours, demanding a formal meeting." I raised an eyebrow, but remained otherwise still. "Hours, you say? Still no Alexander himself, though?" Hunter shook his head. "No, he sent his beta instead, probably a strategic move to save face." A low chuckle escaped me. "And what do they want this time? Let me guess, this is about that mansion again." My voice was laced with cold amusement. Hunter gave a small nod. "It is. Grace's condition is worse. Their resources are stretched thin, and she's not responding well to their efforts. They believe moving her here to the seaside property is their only hope." I steepled my fingers in front of me and tilted my head slightly. "So now they come crawling," I said softly, more to myself than to Hunter. "After everything they allowed to happen to Scarlett, they dare to approach us, expecting charity?" "They're desperate," Hunter admitted. "The Winter Pack donations are drying up too. Grace's condition isn't just bad for her, it's dragging the pack down. She's bleeding them dry emotionally and financially." I leaned forward, my ice-blue eyes fixed on Hunter. "Tell me something, Hunter. How did this engagement of theirs ever come to be? Why was Scarlett even tied to Alexander in the first place?" Hunter hesitated. For once, he looked unsure. "It's a long, complicated situation," he started carefully. "Make it simple," I said, my voice cold. "I don't have patience for complications." Hunter sighed and straightened his shoulders. The engagement was arranged before the Winter Pack knew Scarlett was their real daughter. Originally, the match was for Grace. Alexander and Grace were supposed to secure a political alliance. Only when the truth came out and Scarlett was acknowledged as their bloodline daughter, the engagement conveniently shifted to her. His words hung heavy in the room, and for a moment I said nothing. My jaw clenched tightly, and my fingers curled into fists as the weight of his statement settled in. My wolf, Logan, growled ferociously beneath the surface. To think they arranged to hand Scarlett over as though she were some bargaining tool, as if she had no say in her own future, it disgusted me to my core. "And she had no choice in this," I said quietly, more a statement than a question. "No choice," Hunter confirmed, his own tone simmering with frustration. "They used her, Roman, just as they've always done. She didn't even know about it until much later." I slammed my fist onto the desk, the wood groaning under the force. Logan surged closer to the surface, and I could feel his rage swirling inside me. "They stripped her of agency," I said, my voice low and crackling with fury. "First, they abandoned her. Then, they had the nerve to treat her like a pawn to secure their schemes. And now, Now Alexander sends his beta here, begging for favors? For Grace, of all people? Hunter didn't respond. He didn't need to. The anger radiating from me was thick enough to smother any words he might have offered. Through our bond, I could feel Scarlett upstairs, finally resting, her presence a quiet reassurance against the storm brewing in my chest. That was all that mattered. She was safe now, under my roof, away from the leeches who had used her for political gain. "They'll get nothing from me," I said coldly. "Let them wait. If they ask again, stall. Let them suffer for what they've done." Hunter nodded once, understanding my unspoken command. "Understood. I'll see to it." He hesitated before leaving, but quickly thought better of voicing whatever concern was on his mind. Smart choice. The room dropped into silence as he exited, leaving me with only my thoughts and the faint crackle of Logan's simmering rage. Satisfied the matter was handled, I left the study and made my way up the stairs. The vast halls of the mansion felt both empty and full at the same time, a strange sensation now that Scarlett was here. Pushing open the door to her room, I was met with the familiar scent of her citrusy fragrance. It was a calming presence in the quiet night. She lay fast asleep, curled into the covers, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like a halo. My chest tightened at the sight of her. She looked so peaceful now, so different from the guarded, fierce woman who had faced Daniel and Alexander so boldly earlier. This was the Scarlett few saw, the Scarlett I knew, the girl I had grown up protecting, the one who always sought to hide her pain behind that ironclad exterior. I stepped closer, pausing beside the bed. Her breathing was soft and steady, her chest rising and falling rhythmically. Logan settled slightly at the sight of her, murmuring his approval deep within me. Sinking down onto the edge of the bed, I let my gaze linger on her for a moment longer. Her expression was calm, relaxed in a way it hadn't been in years. Even in sleep, she seemed to instinctively sense my presence, shifting closer to me without waking. I couldn't help it. My fingers brushed a stray strand of hair off her face as I gazed at her youthful features. So much time had passed since we last shared a moment this peaceful. So much had changed. When she left 3 years ago, it had felt like losing a limb. I had searched tirelessly, every instinct in my body screaming at me to find her, to bring her back into the life she was stolen from. Nights without her had been agony, the silence unbearable. All I could think about was how I had failed to protect her, how I had driven her to leave the safety of my pack for the uncertain dangers of the world beyond. And now that I had her here, back where she belonged, I knew one thing for certain: I would never lose her again. Not to Alexander, not to the Winters, not even to her own fears. With a deep breath, I lowered myself onto the bed beside her. Logan rumbled approvingly as the warmth of her presence washed over us. My arms instinctively slid around her waist, pulling her closer to me. She stirred slightly, a soft murmur leaving her lips, but she didn't wake. Instead, she curled further into my embrace, her body fitting perfectly against mine, just as it had when we were younger. The overwhelming waves of anger from earlier began to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. She was safe here with me. No one would ever hurt her again, not while I could still breathe. As the night stretched on, I allowed myself to sink into the comforting rhythm of her breathing. For the first time in years, the weight pressing against my chest seemed to lighten. I wouldn't let her slip away again. I couldn't. Scarlett was mine, my sister, my partner, my mate, and I would destroy anyone who dared try to take her from me. Let Alexander send more of his betas. Let the Winter Pack convene in their desperate attempts to acquire what was never theirs. They could throw resources, pleas, even threats. It didn't matter. Scarlett wasn't part of their world anymore. She was mine to protect now. With that final thought, I tightened my hold on her and drifted into a rare, peaceful sleep. For once, the nightmares didn't follow. Scarlett was safe in my arms, and for tonight, that was enough. Chapter 45, Defiant Bonds. The cold morning air bit at my skin as I turned the corner to Scarlett's treatment center. I spotted Claire just inside the gates, clipboard in hand, her wide, innocent eyes fixed on the rows of delivery trucks. My wolf growled low, sensing my irritation boil over. This human, this pathetic excuse for a secretary. I stormed forward, closing the distance in seconds. Her startled yelp barely escaped her lips before my claws wrapped around her neck. The clipboard clattered to the ground. "Enough games, little human," I hissed, pressing my claws just enough to scrape her skin. Claire squirmed in my grip, her voice trembling despite her attempt at bravery. "What do you want?" I tightened my hold slightly, forcing her attention fully on me. "You're going to call Scarlett. Now." Her eyes darted nervously between my face and my claws, but to her credit, she managed to nod. Reaching shakily into her pocket, she retrieved her phone. When the call connected, Scarlett's voice came through loud and clear, casual, and seemingly unaffected. "This early, Claire? What's going on?" Hearing that nonchalant tone from my own daughter made my fury spike. Claire's lips trembled as I spoke loud enough for Scarlett to hear. "It's not Claire calling. It's me, your mother." The line went momentarily silent before Scarlett's cold reply came through. "And what do you want now?" I didn't hold back. My voice dripped with venom. "It's time you stopped playing childish games, Scarlett. Grace's condition is deteriorating by the hour. You will contact Aiden Walsh and Hazel immediately. No more excuses." Scarlett's tone turned sharp and icy. "How predictable. Always coming to me when your precious Grace is suffering. You think I don't see through this?" "You don't understand." I spat, my claws pressing just enough into Claire's neck to make her whimper. "This isn't about you anymore. She's dying, Scarlett." And then, cool as ice, she laughed, a sound that cut deeper than words. "Now, playing the role of a caring mother, are we? That's rich." "You will do this," I snarled. "Or shall I remind you that I have your assistant here in my hands? One wrong move and—" Scarlett interrupted, her voice a deadly calm. "Careful, Mother. Claire isn't just a regular human assistant. She's registered with the Supernatural Human Management Center. You have no idea of the consequences if you harm her. Do you really want to test me on this?" Her words hung heavy over the line. My claws faltered slightly, the weight of her threat pressing against my pride. Before I could respond, the cold disconnect sound reverberated in my ears. She hung up. Damn her. Claire's shaking pulled me from my thoughts. Trembling like a leaf, she managed to stammer, Please don't." I shoved her roughly aside, letting out an angry curse. "You're lucky this time," I hissed. Spinning on my heel, I stalked away, each step pounding with rage that I hadn't been able to corner Scarlett this time. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Back at the sanatorium, Daniel's quiet anger was a suffocating weight in the room. He sat on the edge of his bed, his injured pride bleeding visibly into every sharp movement as he clenched and unclenched his fists. I entered his room silently, but the moment his amber eyes found mine, his frustration boiled over. "What did she say?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. I hesitated, unwilling to admit I had failed. His gaze hardened at my silence, and his wolf stirred beneath the surface. "She refused, didn't she?" Lowering my head, I sighed, my tone uneven. "She's turned into something beyond reason, Daniel, and yes, she refused." His bitter laugh was sharp and cold, devoid of humor. "Of course she did." He rose from his seat, pacing the room with restless energy. Every injury Scarlett had inflicted on him at the council still weighed heavily on his shoulders. "She's untouchable now, isn't she? That's what she wants us to believe." I reached forward, placing a hand on his tense arm. "We'll find another way, Daniel, but don't let her actions undermine your control. You're better than this." He pulled away, staring at the wall as if seeing Scarlett's defiant emerald gaze instead. "No, Mother," he said sharply. "I'm not better than this, and I don't think any of us are finding another way." She's made sure of that. His voice broke slightly, and he ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "Grace is suffering, and it's Scarlett's fault. She's watching her die and doesn't care. She'll let this happen. She's going to let her sister die, just to prove a point." Those words pierced me deeper than I expected. The weight of his accusation settled like lead in my stomach, and I had no reply to lessen his anger. Alexander's POV. The buzzing of my phone pulled me from the restless prowl of Mason, the black wolf inside me. Jason's face appeared on the screen, impatience written into every line of his expression. "You better have news," I started, my voice harsher than I meant it to be. Jason sighed heavily, his frustration clear. The same story as before, he admitted. No one's willing to budge on the mansion. The owner's untraceable, and their orders are absolute. No amount of money sways them. My grip tightened on the phone as I ground my teeth together. I could feel Mason clawing at the edges of my mind, his anger rumbling like a storm. "Jason," I growled, pacing my office. "This isn't just another property negotiation. Figure it out. You know what's at stake." He hesitated on the other end. "Alpha, this might not just be about money. There's more going on with this property than we know." "What are you saying?" My tone was sharp, demanding. Jason's answer came cautiously. "I'm saying whoever owns this mansion has power, real power, possibly tied to Scarlett, or the other one." The mention of Scarlett's name snapped my focus to razor-sharp clarity. My blood burned, the memory of her standing beside that godforsaken Alpha still fresh and raw. "You think this is her doing?" Jason hesitated. "It's not impossible," a roar built in my chest, barely contained. A Mason snarled so loudly in my mind, it drowned out Jason's voice for a second. Was this her revenge, keeping Grace from the one thing that could heal her? No, I wouldn't let Scarlett dictate this. "If anyone can pull strings to fix this," Jason continued hesitantly, "it's probably Emma. She's loyal to Scarlett, sure, but there are limits. She might be more reasonable." I scoffed bitterly. "Reasonable? With Scarlett? You don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing reasonable about her anymore." Jason fell silent on the line, clearly sensing my boiling point. Before he could excuse himself, another mind link intruded. Sarah's voice, brittle and sharp, demanded my attention. "She refused," she spat venomously, and her anger mirrored my own. "Of course she did," I bit out, pushing Mason's restless prowl to the edges of my head. "Alexander," she continued hurriedly, "you need to stop this avoidable mess. Scarlett is immune to pressure, but that doesn't make her invincible." I barely held back a growl. "Stay out of this, Sarah," I warned, my patience rapidly thinning. "You'll only make things worse." Her scoff echoed through the connection. "It's already worse. What are you planning to do? Beg her?" Her words stung like a slap. Begging Scarlett? As if I hadn't sunk low enough in front of her. Mason surged forward again, snarling his discontent. "No," I finally said, voice low and biting. "But I'll handle it. My way. No more interference." I severed the connection abruptly, the weight of exhaustion, guilt, and anger pressing heavy on me. Mason paced again, relentless in his frustration. Scarlett's presence still lingered in my thoughts. Her defiance, her refusal. Chapter 46, Powerlessness. "Don't forget the files on the treatment center," Claire's cheerful but rushed voice broke through the calm morning air. My hand hovered over my bag as I listened. "Files? What files?" I asked, brows furrowing. "The treatment center files. They're important. They're saved on the computer in the study," Claire clarified, her voice carrying a hint of stress. "You'll need them for the meeting tomorrow." I sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. I glanced at Roman, who already stood at the door, his icy blue eyes narrowing at me in silent disapproval. "They're on the study computer, right?" I confirmed with Claire. "Exactly." "Don't forget them," she replied, firmly, before hanging up. Roman's arms crossed tightly over his chest, his irritation clear. "You're going to delay us," he said, his tone calm but tinted with reproach. "You go ahead," I shot back, hiking the strap of my bag over my shoulder. "You've got a meeting. That's more important. I'll join later after I grab the files." His expression darkened. He didn't reply immediately, and instead just stared at me as though trying to change my mind by sheer force of will. Hunter's low chuckle broke the silence. "Look at you, little wolf," he teased, pulling a car key from his pocket. "Capable entrepreneur, running a treatment empire." I rolled my eyes, ignoring the faint flicker of pride in my chest. Someone has to make things run smoothly around here. Roman let out a slow, exasperated sigh. "Fine," he muttered impassively. He stepped aside slightly, motioning to the team of warriors waiting nearby. "You're not going alone," he stated, brooking no room for argument. The gesture made me stop and glare at him. "Seriously? This is overkill." His sharp gaze softened slightly, but only slightly. "I don't take risks, Scarlett." A small flick of his wrist summoned his warriors forward. His precision was unbearable. Before I could protest, the matter was settled. He instructed one of the guards to ready a car for me, complete with extra protection. "You're impossible," I muttered, shaking my head. "You love it," Hunter chimed in, grinning. He slid into the passenger seat of Roman's car. "Don't get into too much trouble, little wolf. Save the fireworks for the real meeting." I huffed, muttering under my breath as Roman and Hunter's convoy pulled away. The convoy was silent, but efficient. The cars moved steadily, the faint hum of engines almost soothing against the crisp morning. Then I caught the scent. Tobacco. A specific and cheap blend designed to irritate the senses. There he was, Alexander, leaning against the sleek hood of his SUV like he owned the world. Beside him, his beta Jason gestured animatedly to my guards, apparently trying to negotiate. His hands moved sharply, his jacket almost flapping with the effort. "They're getting desperate," Hunter commented from the passenger seat. He didn't bother hiding his amusement. My ice blue eyes locked onto the scene, narrowing as I watched Alexander flick ash from his cigarette, feigning disinterest in Jason's futile efforts. "Pathetic," I muttered. Hunter turned his head slightly. "Another request. Same as before. Guess he thinks today's the day we'll finally bend." I said nothing at first. The air between us grew cold with tension as the convoy slowed near the gates. "Should I?" One of the guards motioned toward Jason. "No," I cut in sharply. "Don't waste time." My words turned the air electric, a quiet hum of dominance filling the space. The guards stiffened and returned their attention to the cars. Jason's voice carried faintly, but I paid him no mind. "Alexander isn't giving up," Hunter added, leaning his head back slightly. "You'd think after all this time, he'd understand the answer won't change." I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "He'll learn," I said, keeping my voice dangerously low. Hunter let out a short laugh. "You think Scarlett might run into him?" "She's pretty close behind us, you know." I didn't like the thought, but as Scarlett's face flashed in my mind, calm, defiant, and more powerful than ever, I allowed a smirk to pull at the corner of my mouth. "She can handle it," I replied simply. Hunter raised his eyebrows but didn't press further. When I met his gaze, his slight smirk mirrored mine, and I knew we were thinking the same thing. The convoy pushed through, the gates shutting firmly behind us, leaving Alexander and Jason stranded on the outside. Scarlett's pew. The driver pulled out of the estate, the documents now safely tucked in my bag. The ride was quiet, my focus split between the upcoming meeting and lingering thoughts of Roman's over-the-top security measures. It was peaceful until the estate gates came into view. There, looming like an unwanted reminder, was Alexander. He stood casually near the edge of the road, with Jason at his side and a few of his guards forming a loose barrier across the path. My driver tensed slightly, his grip firming on the wheel. He glanced into the rearview mirror, nervously. "Keep going," I instructed firmly, my voice flat. The driver nodded and kept steady. The car's pace didn't shift until we were mere moments away from passing. Alexander raised his hand, signaling sharply to Jason. His beta moved immediately, stepping into the path to block us. Cora stirred restlessly within me as I watched Jason and a couple of Alexander's goons. Their tactic wasn't subtle. The vehicle slowed reluctantly. As it approached, Jason moved toward the driver's side window, his movements deliberate. The nerves in the car were palpable. "Drive through," I commanded again. My own calmness surprised even me. But the guards didn't back down. They shifted, forming a loose wall that tightened as Jason grinned smugly through the glass. I rolled my eyes. "Stop the car," I ordered coldly. The driver acted instantly, and I opened the door before the car even came to a full stop. Alexander's amber eyes met mine instantly, his features tightening with recognition and disbelief. My emerald eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here?" My voice cut through the tense air like a blade. Alexander's lips curled into a sneer. "I could ask you the same." His wolf mason rumbled just beneath his surface, threatening to break free. But there was no power here. His own alpha command was weak, his desperation too strong. I stepped toward him unflinchingly. "This is how you spend your time now, blocking cars at gates like a rogue?" "You've got some nerve," he growled, stepping closer. "Hiding out here, parading your independence. Do you know how much destruction you've caused?" I tilted my head slightly, my expression cool. The only destruction is what you've brought upon yourself, or has your sense of reality finally slipped that far away? He faltered, his jaw tightening as his fury boiled over. You're a disgrace, he spat, his amber eyes flashing with anger. To your pack, to your name, you've degraded yourself by staying here, thinking you're above it all. I held his gaze, unmoving. His words washed over me without the slightest effect. That's rich coming from someone wrapped in chains by his own guilt. His composure cracked, and in one sharp movement he grabbed my wrist. His alpha energy lashed out, attempting to dominate. It hit like a breeze and dissipated just as quickly. I let him grip me for a brief moment, my untouched expression unnerving him. Then, with calm precision, I twisted my hand and struck. The movement was fluid and fast. My wolf-driven strength surged through my body as my kick collided with his chest. He stumbled back, gasping as the air was knocked from his lungs. Jason moved instinctively, his steps hesitant, as though sizing up my next move. I glanced at him coldly, and he froze in place. You really thought that would work? I asked Alexander, my voice sharp and dripping with disdain. His response was a growl, but his tone was laced with frustration rather than authority. I turned back to the car without sparing another glance, signaling for the driver to move again. As the car sped away, I glanced into the side mirror. Alexander remained rooted in place, hunched slightly as he caught his breath. His guards surrounded him, their faces tight with unease. And then he roared. A sound filled with frustration, anger, and something much weaker underneath it all, powerlessness. I couldn't help the faint, triumphant smile that tugged at my lips. For the first time, I had truly walked away with the upper hand. Alexander's attempts meant nothing to me now. His power no longer had any control. Chapter 47, Rage. Scarlett's car disappeared in the distance, leaving a cloud of dust and fury in its wake. My hands gripped the edge of my SUV hood so tightly I could hear the faint creak of metal bending. Mason howled, his unrestrained rage throbbing against the edges of my control. She had evaded me, again. Air burned in my lungs, every breath heavy, every heartbeat amplifying the storm inside me. That sleek black car, so polished it reflected the boiling blue skies, bore a logo I could no longer ignore. Jason approached cautiously, his steps light like he feared stepping too close. "Alpha," he began, his voice tentative, testing my mood. "Speak," I growled out, barely glancing his way. My focus stayed pinned on the empty road Scarlett had just taken, as if my glare could conjure her back. Jason cleared his throat. His hesitation just sharpened my anger. Finally, he said, "Scarlett's been seen here regularly. Every report indicates that she's comfortable. She moves about like she owns the place." The burn in my chest turned into fire that licked up my throat. "Owns it?" Disbelief mixed with my anger, adding fuel to Mason's restless growls. Jason shifted uneasily, likely sensing my wolf's oppressive dominance radiating outward. "We haven't confirmed official ownership, Alpha, but every sign points to that conclusion." The bitter realization twisted inside me like a knife. Scarlett had gone to lengths I never even imagined, weaving herself into shadows I hadn't thought to question. She had carved out a position of power without me realizing the extent. She walked away from us and did this? My voice was a low snarl, raw and feral. Jason didn't immediately answer, so I snapped my eyes toward him, daring him to say something honest. "Answer me." Jason gulped but held himself together, and for that I gave him points. "Alpha?" He trailed off briefly, but seeing my darkening expression, he pushed forward in a rush. "The vehicle. The one she left in. It bore the symbol of the Shadow Organization." My mind fractured for a moment, shock freezing me on the edge of disbelief. "The Shadow Organization?" Jason nodded quickly. "All the signs line up. The logo, the black SUVs, it's undeniable." Mason's growl hitched in my throat, vibrating through my chest. My hands swung out instinctively, connecting with the hood of the car. Bang! That logo, that cursed insignia that we'd tracked for years, always just ahead of us, always untouchable. Puppeteers in the dark, pulling strings that toppled packs, alliances, and even territories. And Scarlett was aligned with them? The metallic sting from my fist didn't cool the fire raging inside me. I exhaled harshly, trying to cage Mason back, focus sharpening as endless questions filled my head. "You're positive?" I asked, my words clipped and cold. "Yes, Alpha." Jason's voice wavered slightly but remained firm enough beneath my scrutiny. "There's something else." "Nathan." I cut him off, not in the mood for long-winded explanations. "Speak." Jason flinched. "Nathan's been trying to mediate. He attempted to approach Scarlett through private channels, offering reconciliation after Sophie's." He paused carefully. "Outburst. But what?" I snapped, patience non-existent. "It sounds like Nathan is afraid." Jason's voice lowered with hesitation. That stopped me cold. I looked at him sharply, trying to gauge whether I'd misheard. "Afraid?" Jason nodded minutely, avoiding direct eye contact. "He hasn't said it outright, but it's clear. His diplomatic efforts aren't just for Sophie." He paused briefly, shifting uneasily on his feet. "He's worried about what the Shadow Organization could mean. Scarlett's connection to them, her influence, it's shaking him." I barked a sharp laugh, dripping with bitterness. Nathan Blake, the cunning diplomatic alpha, now tiptoeing near Scarlett for survival. The irony almost made me choke. "And Scarlett?" I rasped out, my voice coated in venom. Jason drew in a breath. "Refused, completely. My understanding is she saw his approach as nothing but a shallow gesture. From what reports indicate, her position and their protection is unyielding." Unyielding. The word echoed in my head, cementing her position and the walls surrounding her. Before I could retort, Grace's psychic link pierced through me, forcing my staggered breath as it clawed into my senses. The pain, desperation, and toxicity spreading through her veins rippled wildly against our bond. Mason keened softly, the shared pain twisting like thorns into my skull. "She's getting worse," I whispered, almost to myself. My grip loosened on the SUV, though only fractionally. I squeezed my eyes shut briefly, caught in the fissure between rage and helplessness. Every second Grace's condition worsened felt like a clock ticking louder and louder. "No." I snarled to no one, forcing the toxic spiral out of my mind. When my eyes snapped open, Jason shrank further under my focus. "Dig deeper," I commanded. "I need everything. I don't care what shadows you need to pull from. Bring me the truth about Scarlett, Shadow Organization, and all." My gaze darkened further, and find Hazel and Aiden, if they've sided with her. I didn't need to finish the threat. Jason nodded hastily, sensing Mason's power threatening to explode. "Yes, Alpha!" Without wasting another second, he bolted, no doubt eager to distance himself from my rising fury. The gravel crunched beneath my boots as I stalked the road alone, Mason's fury blending further with my own. "Scarlett, how?" The weight of Grace's worsening link stayed heavy as I reached the Blake Pack's meeting hall. Its walls, usually a hub of structured chaos and noise, buzzed with frantic discontent. Conversations overlapped in hushed tones, but the unease was tangible. My footsteps echoed as I moved toward the central chamber. All eyes turned briefly toward me before hurriedly looking away. They knew better than to approach. Nathan Blake's voice rang out from the core, cutting through the charged atmosphere. His tone was sharp, controlled fury, barely contained. "You've dragged this entire pack into chaos, Sophie!" Nathan exploded, his fists colliding with the heavy table between them. Sophie flinched, but quickly recovered, her chin tilting upward defiantly. "I was protecting this pack's dignity. She thinks she can waltz into council." "She thinks because she can." Nathan roared in response, cursing under his breath before towering over her like an unyielding shadow. "Your actions have cost us, Sophie. Do you realize the fires you've stoked with your pathetic display of whatever that was? She left that meeting with leverage to bury us." Sophie faltered under his intensity, but her voice remained laced with rebellion. "I exposed her lies. I proved how—" "You proved nothing." Nathan's claws scraped audibly against the wood as he leaned closer to her face with glinting, furious eyes. "What you did was strengthen her position, Sophie. Scarlett walked away unscathed and more powerful than before because of you. If we lose everything over this—" He didn't bother finishing, shaking his head as his claws retracted sharply. I stepped into the room, interrupting their brewing storm. Nathan snapped his gaze over to me, amber eyes blazing. "And here's the other element of chaos," he sneered bitterly. "Tell me, Alexander, are we here to clean up Scarlett's mess or yours?" I straightened, keeping my stance calm despite his biting tone. The situation with Scarlett isn't something I asked for. Nathan's laugh rang hollow. No? Then why is my pack burning through resources like wildfire while your engagement to her left a trail of unease that didn't exist before? I bristled at his sharp accuracy. Mason snarled within me, but I clamped down the urge to respond instinctively. My loyalty is to Grace, I said simply, meeting his searing gaze. You act as though that erases the damage done, Nathan growled out. You left a chasm wide enough for Scarlett to waltz through with her connections unchallenged. I opened my mouth to argue, but Sophie cut through angrily. None of this would have happened if you'd just completed the mating ritual. Her accusation hit like a slap, even though I knew it wasn't entirely false. Nathan didn't let her defiance boil longer. He slammed a hand against the table again, quieting the room instantly. One more word, he warned her, ice dripping from his voice. Sophie bit her lip as her shallow breaths betrayed her anger. She didn't dare speak further. Nathan turned his glare back on me. Where do you stand now, Alexander? Still tangled between Grace's condition and Scarlett's rising power? Because if you're leaving my pack to weather this storm alone, you can walk out now. Grace's faint, broken cries pierced through my bond again, weak, fragile. My chest tightened as the weight of my failure grew heavier. Chapter 48, Forced Submission. Scarlett's POV. I had just sent off the last of the medical supply shipments when my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't been expecting, Nathan Black. I rolled my eyes, letting it ring twice before finally answering. Nathan, I said, my tone flat. This better be important. I'm busy and not in the mood for pack games. A low growl hummed on the other end. It is important, he snapped. His voice was sharp, edged with frustration. I've got Sophie here, and she's going to apologize for her behavior at the council meeting. I blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Sophie? Apologize? I couldn't help the smirk that tugged at my lips. I'll believe it when I hear it. Nathan exhaled hard, his irritation clear. Be ready, he barked before the muffled sounds of movement came through the line. There was the faint sound of scuffling, and then Sophie's voice crackled through. I apologize, she said stiffly, the words forced and empty. I leaned against the counter, biting back a laugh. What was that? I asked, feigning confusion. I didn't quite hear you. You're going to have to say it clearer than that. Sophie hissed something under her breath, but Nathan's growl cut her off. The sound was loud, commanding, and it even made my wolf Cora stir with amusement. Properly, Sophie, Nathan demanded. This isn't a joke, and I'm not asking again. Her voice came through again, this time brittle and trembling under the weight of Nathan's alpha dominance. I apologize, she repeated, her resentment seeping through, for my disrespectful comments at the council meeting. I tilted my head, letting that sink in before responding. Interesting, but doesn't this feel incomplete? My tone was deliberately playful. Nathan, didn't she say quite a bit more that day? Perhaps she should repeat it, exactly as she said it. There was an agonizing silence before Sophie's voice came again. This time, she stammered through the very same insults she'd tossed so freely at the gathering. Her words were shaky, dripping with reluctant obedience. I grinned, letting her finish before I spoke. Ah, yes, that sounds familiar now. Though it would have been so much more entertaining if you still believed the nonsense you were saying. Sophie snapped, her voice trembling with rage. You think this is funny? Acting like you've won. Nathan's snarl erupted again. Enough, Sophie. Don't make this worse for yourself. Her sharp intake of breath was audible. She stumbled over another apology, humiliated and silenced by Nathan's alpha power. Better, I said coolly. Thanks for the entertainment, Nathan. Do let me know if you need to practice this exercise with anyone else. Nathan groaned audibly before cutting the connection. I placed the phone back on the counter, my smirk lingering. Watching Sophie flail under Nathan's command was better than I'd imagined. By midday, whispers of Sarah's latest plot began to trickle in through pack gossip channels. Claire entered my office cautiously, clutching her phone like it was about to explode. Scarlett, you need to hear this, she said nervously. Frowning slightly, I motioned for her to continue. She passed me the phone. On it was an update from a northern merchant I'd once considered an ally, Or so I thought. Sarah had reportedly issued an order across all Northern Territory, blacklist Scarlett's treatment center. No supplies, no support, nothing. I let out a dry laugh, handing the phone back to Claire. She's seriously taking that route? I asked, amused rather than annoyed. After everything, that's her grand move? Claire nodded hesitantly. She's trying to force you to submit, she said softly, to make you feel like you've got no choice but to help. I snorted. Submit? The word felt foreign on my tongue. She's going to learn real fast that I'm not a 20-year-old pup anymore. Claire hesitated, as if waiting for me to tell her what to do next. Come with me, I ordered, standing abruptly. She followed me down the hallway toward the main room where some of my newest shipments were being organized. Workers were arranging shelves of priceless items, elixirs, rare herbs, and above all, crystals that shimmered like captured sunlight. I pointed to the display shelves near the entrance. Set these up front and center, I instructed. Let everyone see just how unaffected we are. Claire nodded quickly, already signaling the workers to move. I crossed my arms, standing back to watch. The workers carefully arranged the glowing healing crystals, their movements precise and deliberate. Under the lighting, the crystals gleamed like fire, each one more breathtaking than the last. Through my still-fading bond with Sarah, I felt the faint ripples of her shock. She must have already heard about this shipment, heard that I was flaunting my success right under her nose. Let her stew in it, I muttered, smirking at the thought. It didn't take long for Nathan to arrive at the clinic, Sophie in tow. They stormed into my office without knocking, Nathan looking like a man seconds away from losing his temper entirely. Sophie, meanwhile, was the picture of visible discomfort. Her eyes darted around the room, widening at the sight of my prosperous operation. The clinic was bustling with workers, shelves brimming with rare supplies, and an air of authority so thick you'd need claws to cut through it. You've got a nerve coming unannounced, I said, leaning casually against my desk. This isn't about another apology, is it? It is, Nathan growled. He shoved Sophie forward unceremoniously. This time, in person. Sophie shot him a venomous look, but he didn't budge. She stumbled forward reluctantly, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. She struggled to meet my gaze. I want to apologize. Do you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Sophie flushed with barely contained irritation. Yes, I shouldn't have said the things I said at the council meeting. Her tone was almost convincing, but I wasn't done yet. I leaned forward slightly, letting my voice drop. Wasn't there something else, Sophie? Something about Alexander? Her lips pressed into a thin line. Alexander's devotion to Grace, she bit out. Yes, I said it. And, I prompted, gesturing for her to continue, you should finish that thought. Her hands shook slightly as she muttered, I said you couldn't compare to her. I smirked, sitting back in my chair. Funny how that looks now, doesn't it? Considering Alexander's running himself ragged trying to win favor in my court. Her face paled at the words, and Nathan's low growl of approval rumbled through the room. Sit with that for a while, I added. See how it feels to be playing second every time you look in the mirror. Sophie stumbled back, glaring at me as tears of frustration welled in her eyes. Enough, Nathan barked sharply, silencing her completely. Through the bond I shared with Roman, I could feel the echo of his satisfaction in my triumph, his approval for each calculated word, each reminder of the power I now held. As they turned to leave, Sophie couldn't help herself. She paused by the door, looking back at me with one last burst of defiance. Daniel, she started, her voice gaining strength, will make sure you lose access to the sacred grounds. Nathan cut her off with a thunderous roar. Sophie! His yell reverberated through the room, heavy with unbearable alpha dominance. Sophie practically flinched out of her shoes, her words dying on the tip of her tongue. I tilted my head, watching her carefully. Sacred grounds? I repeated, letting the amusement seep into my tone. Is that supposed to scare me? She blinked, confused. You really don't get it, do you? I asked, stepping closer until the full weight of my wolf's power shimmered just beneath my skin. I don't need you. I don't need the Winter Pack. And I sure as hell don't need access to your sacred grounds. Just her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Take your threats to someone who might actually care, I finished, my tone cold. Her body visibly deflated, all the fight gone from her as she looked to Nathan for support. But his expression was stony, and he simply dragged her out without another word. The moment the door clicked shut behind them, the tension in the room broke like a snapped wire. Through whispers and bonds, I could already sense Sarah's growing desperation. The realization was finally starting to hit her. None of her manipulations worked anymore. I smiled faintly, glancing at my shelves of precious supplies. Everything she tried was futile now. I controlled the very resources that Grace needed to survive. Their power over me was long gone. Chapter 49, Forced Submission, Scarlett's POV. Claire burst through the door of my office. Her steps hurried, her shoulders tense as if she carried the weight of a mountain. Her face was pinched with worry, and the clipboard in her hands shook slightly. I looked up from the order forms I had been reviewing and leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest. "What is it, Claire?" My voice was calm, steady, but I could see the urgency in her wide blue eyes. She took a deep breath, clutching the clipboard as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. "Scarlett, the Winter Pack has officially declared all their resources off-limits to you," she said, each word tumbling out in a rush. "Sacred healing grounds, rare herbs, everything. They've sanctioned you completely." At first, I said nothing. I let the words settle in the air, weighing their significance. Slowly, a smirk crept across my lips. "Is that so?" I finally said, a hint of amusement curling in my voice. Claire blinked, clearly thrown off by my reaction. "Scarlett, this could make things difficult," she said tentatively. I shook my head, pushing back my chair and standing. "Difficult? No, Claire. They've just proven how powerless they are." I stepped toward the large window that overlooked the healing center's main floor. Outside, I could see the bustling activity of my staff, unpacking shipment after shipment of the latest premium herbs and healing supplies. The crates stacked high glinted with labels of moonstone elixirs and wolf recovery serums so rare that entire packs would barter sacred grounds for even a vial. Through the large glass window, I also noticed 2 winter wolf guards watching from a distance, their gazes sharp as they took in every detail of my operation. I gestured for Claire to come closer, pointing toward the scene outside. "Do you see that?" I asked her, my voice calm but firm. She nodded hesitantly, following my gaze. "Yes, but they can block their resources. Ban me from their precious grounds. It doesn't matter." I stepped closer to the glass, staring at the guards, who shifted uncomfortably under my gaze even from the distance. "Because I don't need them. They don't realize that I'm beyond their control now. Let them watch. Let them see what true independence looks like." Claire's expression shifted slowly, her worry melting into awe as she took in my confidence. I turned back to her and folded my arms. "Has the latest shipment arrived intact?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, everything is accounted for, the moonstone crystals, the rare healing salves, all of it." "Good," I said with a smile. "Then get back to organizing inventory and make sure our most valuable herbs are displayed openly. Let them see exactly what they can't touch." Claire hesitated for a moment, then bowed her head slightly before hurrying out to relay my orders. Outside the window, I watched as the winter wolves exchanged tense glances, their scrutiny of my operation growing sharper. I could feel the anger stirring in them. They were realizing that their sanctions meant nothing. And I loved it. The air in the healing center shifted abruptly, the faint shimmer of our protective wards rippling like water struck by a pebble. I straightened from where I stood by the window, instantly aware of the arrival of a powerful presence. Moments later, Nathan Blake stormed into the main hall, his tall figure cutting an imposing silhouette. His wolf energy radiated control, yet beneath it I sensed his agitation, his frustration barely contained. "Scarlett," he greeted curtly, his golden eyes locking onto mine. Behind him, half-dragged and half-pushed by his overwhelming alpha dominance, was Sophie, trembling but trying to hold her head high. Her lips were tight, her expression a poorly crafted mask of defiance. I raised an eyebrow, folding my arms over my chest. "Nathan Blake," I said slowly, tilting my head slightly, "to what do I owe this unexpected visit?" He exhaled sharply, stepping aside to bring Sophie fully into view. "We're here to settle this nonsense from the Territory Council meeting. Sophie has something to say to you." I allowed a small smile to tug at my lips and leaned back against the edge of my desk. "Is that so?" Sophie's eyes darted around the room, clearly uncomfortable. She had barely stepped over the threshold when her gaze landed on the towering stacks of healing crystals and rare herbs surrounding us. Her jaw dropped slightly. "You," she murmured, her voice almost inaudible. She seemed to take a step back before catching herself. I waved a hand lazily. "Go on, Sophie. I'm sure Nathan didn't drag you all the way here for a sightseeing tour." Her cheeks flushed with humiliation. "I didn't mean—" "Sophie!" Nathan's voice boomed through the hall, cutting her off. His alpha power flooded the room, making the temperature drop slightly as everyone, including my staff, froze in their tracks. Emma, standing near the supply shelves, crossed her arms with a satisfied smirk as she watched the scene unfold. Nathan's hard gaze bore into Sophie. "You've already embarrassed the Blake pack once with your insolence. Fix this, now." For a moment it seemed like Sophie might outright refuse. But the weight of Nathan's dominance bore down on her, forcing her shoulders to slump slightly. "I'm sorry," she finally said through gritted teeth. I tilted my head, a mock expression of confusion crossing my face. "I'm sorry, what was that? I didn't quite catch it." Sophie's face flushed an even deeper shade of red. "I'm sorry," she repeated, louder this time, though the bitterness in her tone was palpable. I tapped my fingers against the edge of the desk. That doesn't sound very sincere." Nathan let out a low growl, his patience visibly snapping. His power surged, making Sophie's legs tremble beneath her. "Dominate her, mind-link her. I don't care how you do it," he said to me harshly. "Just give your answer." Sophie jerked upright as if struck. "Fine," she spat, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry for mocking you at the council gathering. And—" She hesitated, her pride visibly warring with Nathan's command. "And for disrespecting your position," she added reluctantly. I clapped my hands together slowly, a mirthless smile on my lips. There. That wasn't so hard, was it? Before Nathan could pull her away, her bravado flared back to life. "You think this makes you better than everyone? Just wait. Alexander is doing everything possible to save Grace. You won't win." I leaned forward slightly, narrowing my eyes at her. "Win?" My voice was soft, icy. "Oh, Sophie, this isn't about winning. It's about surviving. And whether you like it or not, Alexander's desperation to take what belongs to me only strengthens my position." Sophie's defiance crumbled under the weight of my words. Her gaze flickered to the healing crystals stacked nearby, a visible reminder of the power I now held. I saw the understanding dawn in her eyes, the realization that Grace's survival hinged on me, on my forgiveness. Nathan yanked her back abruptly, steering her toward the door. He said nothing more, but I felt his lingering energy, his silent acknowledgement that I had proven my position once again. Sophie tried one last attempt at defiance before leaving, throwing a final threat over her shoulder. "Don't think you're untouchable, Scarlett. Daniel will ensure that your access to sacred grounds is permanently severed." Nathan acted before I could, his power cutting through the air like a sharp blade. "Enough!" he snapped, his tone drenched in authority. "You're lucky I've tolerated you this long." I watched as the final remnants of Sophie's bravado extinguished entirely. Whenever Sophie glanced my way next, I could see the fear and resignation in her eyes. As they left, I exhaled slowly, turning back to the window. The winter wolves were gone, their presence replaced by an unmistakable silence. The pack's favorites, Grace and Alexander, were crumbling. They were mine now, at my mercy. And somehow, the thought didn't feel satisfying enough yet. Chapter 50. A Message. Nathan stood in front of me like a man balancing on a thin thread. His frustration was visible, his sharp jaw clenched tightly as though holding back words he wished he could say. His alpha energy lingered faintly in the air, but it wasn't enough to faze me. Sophie had already skulked out of the room moments earlier, her bitter stare doing nothing to mask the humiliation she'd just endured. Now it was Nathan's turn to fix the mess she had made. "I'd like to formally apologize," Nathan began. His tone sounded rehearsed, clipped, like every word was dragged out of him. Sophie's actions were unacceptable. Her words crossed many lines, and they do not represent the Blake Pack or my leadership. I let out a short laugh, leaning casually back in my chair. My emerald eyes bore into him, watching his composed facade grow thinner by the second. An apology? I repeated, tilting my head and letting just enough mockery slip into my tone. Really, Nathan? Coming from you, I'd almost believe it. Nathan's amber eyes darkened slightly, though he kept his expression tight. I could tell he was trying to keep his emotions in check, likely because he didn't want to make things worse. It's not just an apology, Scarlett, he said through gritted teeth. It's an acknowledgement that what happened at the council meeting should not have happened. Sophie's behavior reflects poorly on my leadership, and I take full responsibility for it. I raised one eyebrow, letting his words hang awkwardly in the air. His attempt to salvage the situation was admirable, I supposed, but it wasn't enough to erase the damage Sophie had caused. Does it reflect poorly, though? I asked lightly, keeping my tone playful but sharp enough to make him squirm. Or is this just what your pack has grown accustomed to under your command? Nathan's hands tightened into fists at his sides. It was subtle, but I noticed it. He probably wasn't expecting me to cut so directly into his leadership. His shoulders squared slightly as if bracing against an attack. I don't think this is the time to question my leadership, Scarlett, he said, his voice low and controlled. I'm here to make amends, not to argue. Make amends? I repeated, letting out another short laugh. My fingers drummed lazily against the surface of the desk between us. Nathan, you're acting like Sophie's actions were some kind of isolated incident. But they weren't, were they? If anything, they were just the tip of the iceberg. He bristled slightly, the tension in his body growing more pronounced, but he didn't argue. Not yet, anyway. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on the desk and steepling my fingers beneath my chin. Let me make something very clear to you, I said, my voice dropping an octave as I locked eyes with him. Whatever grudges Sophie has against me, and let's not pretend this is just about her, they end here. You will ensure that this doesn't happen again, or I will. Nathan's jaw worked silently for a moment before he finally nodded. I understand, he said, the words stiff and reluctant but undeniably genuine. Good. I leaned back in my chair again, letting the faintest of smiles play on my lips. Then I suppose we're halfway to being even, for now. Nathan let out a long breath through his nose, clearly relieved that the conversation hadn't escalated any further. But before he could turn to leave, I spoke again. One more thing, I said, my voice light but firm enough to stop him in his tracks. He turned back to face me, his expression carefully guarded. What is it? I smiled faintly, letting a sharp glint of amusement shine in my emerald eyes. Daniel, I said simply, watching Nathan's reaction carefully. His posture stiffened visibly, and his amber eyes narrowed slightly. Finally, the mask of calm cracked just a little. What about him? Nathan asked cautiously. I tilted my head slightly, feigning an innocent expression. Oh, nothing much. Just a little bird told me he's been spending quite a bit of time with someone from outside the pack, someone human. Silence followed my words, and I watched as Nathan's face shifted from confusion to realization. You know how these things go, I continued, my tone almost playful. It doesn't take much for a harmless little rumor to spiral into something much bigger. And we wouldn't want that, would we? Nathan's jaw tightened again, his fists curling once more at his sides. I'll look into it, he said stiffly. Of course you will, I replied sweetly. The sharp edge in my voice didn't go unnoticed. Nathan gave me one last look, his eyes unreadable, before finally turning on his heel and striding toward the door. Do let me know if Sophie needs another lesson in etiquette, I called after him, unable to resist one last jab. He didn't respond, but the way his shoulders tensed told me I'd hit my mark. When the door clicked shut behind him, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smirk. Nathan might have walked in thinking he still had some upper hand, but it was clear he had left knowing otherwise. The faint hum of the lamp overhead was the only sound in the study as I leaned back in my chair, staring at the swirling smoke from the cigarette in my hand. Scarlett's voice still lingered in my mind from our earlier mind link, though her words didn't ease the tension in my chest. "How'd it go with Nathan?" I had asked her, knowing full well it hadn't been a pleasant interaction. "As well as expected," she had replied, her tone light but tinged with the sharpness that always followed encounters like these. Though she didn't explicitly say it, I knew Nathan had questioned her about us, about me. The thought made Logan stir restlessly within me, his growl reverberating faintly in my chest. "You didn't let him push, did you?" I asked, my voice already dipping into a growl. Scarlett's soft laugh floated through the link. "Roman, please. You think I'd let someone like Nathan outmaneuver me?" Pride warmed me briefly, but it didn't completely snuff out my irritation. "Good," I muttered, yet the protective instinct within me raged quietly. "But I'll handle him from now on. He doesn't get to involve you in their games." She let out a soft sigh, clearly trying to brush off my concern, but I wasn't so easily deterred. As my mind replayed the conversation, I reached for the stack of papers on the desk, arranging them with sharp, deliberate movements as Logan continued to bristle. "She handled it well," Hunter remarked from the other side of the room, his arms crossed as he leaned casually against the bookshelf. "I know," I replied shortly, the glowing end of the cigarette flaring briefly as I took another drag. "But it's not about her handling it, it's about them knowing where to draw the line. And they won't." Hunter didn't argue, his gaze steady as he watched me sort through the documents. Brief flashes of memories flickered through my mind like ghosts. Scarlett's 14th birthday, sitting alone by the Thorn Pack training tree as the other kids celebrated nearby. Her 16th birthday, pretending not to care that the Winters pack had conveniently scheduled a council meeting the same day. Years of isolation, of misery. And those wolves thought they could still control her? "I take it you're still thinking about her birthdays," Hunter said quietly, his voice even but not without a hint of softness. I exhaled a slow stream of smoke, nodding. "Everything they did," I murmured. "They thought it would break her. But it didn't," Hunter pointed out, his gaze sharpening. "No," I agreed, though my jaw clenched slightly. "But that doesn't mean I'll let it happen again." The documents detailing Scarlett's upcoming celebration lay neatly spread across my desk, a stark contrast to the tangled thoughts in my mind. This year would be different. Hunter glanced at the papers curiously, his brows lifting slightly. "You're really going all out for her birthday, aren't you?" I stubbed out the cigarette, the faint hiss of the ember extinguishing filling the quiet space. "She deserves better," I said simply. Hunter smirked faintly. "A message, then?" "Yes," I replied, my icy blue gaze fixed ahead like stone, unyielding. "A message they won't forget."